First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now. Thanks for joining us here throughout the day. We've had a lot of coverage on a lot of different things, but something that I will say most people, if you didn't see it, you certainly heard about it yesterday. We did here in the newsroom. I'm talking about that. That balloon right there that was seen over Portland, over the Northwest, a lot of different places. It's definitely one of the things that we probably have had the most phone calls about in quite some time. And, we found out that it was actually for scientific research. But what we're going to do right now is find out more about it because it's from a company called Near Space Corporation. And I've got the president of Near Space, Kevin Tucker, joining us right now. Kevin, I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to talk to us about this. It was certainly a lot. I'm going to guess that you probably got a lot of phone calls yesterday, a lot of people writing you. What was your day like yesterday when everybody started seeing this?
Well, it got pretty busy. First, thanks for chatting about this, Greg. We find it interesting, so I could probably talk a really long time, but we'll try not to do that. Now the day starts, our team preps for a couple days beforehand. The day prior, we verify weather. We check everything with the FAA and any other agencies to make sure everything looks good. We model the trajectories of the balloon and be sure they meet all the criteria. And then we get the team out to get some rest. Yesterday, we actually brought the team in around 3:30 a.m. to get started and have everything ready to go right at dawn. So we're ready. And that's some of the calmest times for ground winds. So we launched this balloon at around 7 o'clock yesterday morning. It took about 90 to 100 minutes to reach an altitude of almost 110,000 feet. And by that point, it had moved with the wind. The winds were a little bit higher than the global forecast data predicted. So we went exactly as expected, but a little bit further to the east. We were never over the metropolitan areas and we were outside of safety zones, and the FAA knew right where we were at. So all was good, but it was visible. So about then is when the phone started going and people started making suppositions or calling, and we actually hadn't had that happen before it to that level. But I think, events in the last few months kind of cued everyone's interest. So they're like, instead of just, oh, that's interesting, they're like, what the heck is that? And then the balloon did exactly as expected. It was from about 90,000 feet up to about 110. It was starting to turn back and basically reverse itself towards the west. And it continued to do that. And we completed our scientific test process about a half hour later, and everything came down to the ground as expected. And we had everything collected up by yesterday evening and called it a very long day. So that was our day yesterday.
That's a lot in one day.
It was a lot, but that's what we do. So it went well.
Well, let's talk about the balloon itself. Now, there's something that I think is a misnomer, which you actually corrected me on before we even went on, and in that this is not a weather balloon. It is a scientific research balloon. And so can you explain, explain for everybody just a little bit more about the balloon itself?
Sure. A typical weather balloon carries what's called a radiosonde. So it's a very small object that transpons data back as it ascends about its location, direction, temperatures, pressures. So you get all that data relevant to weather. And as it ascends, it's using a latex type balloon. So it's a kind of like a thicker rubber. And it's a sealed system filled with helium. So it keeps going up. It keeps going up higher. And it sends data down as it goes. And once it's all the way to its float altitude, it bursts, it ruptures and fails, and stuff falls back down to the ground somewhere. So that's a typical weather balloon. And this little thing it's carrying weighs, maybe a pound. And it's inconsequential as it falls back to Earth. So our balloons are very different. So the pictures you're showing there are the types of balloons we make. We use a very precise, thin polyfilm that's made specifically for balloons, very specialized in its properties. It's somewhat translucent, but has a little bit of an opaqueness. And what we do is we design a balloon to lift a certain mass of equipment to a very specific altitude. And at that altitude, it floats. It literally floats. It's like floating, a person buoyant on the top of the water. Has to do with displacement. So that's related to the size of the balloon. How much helium you put in it is really more linked to how fast you get to where you're going, not the altitude at which it stops and floats. So those are the type of balloons we use, and they're for the purposes of taking different sorts of scientific payloads up to altitudes much, much higher than you can with an airplane. So I think we mentioned yesterday in talking with you guys that typically airplanes are flying at 40 or 50,000 feet. FAA controlled airspace goes to 60. Yesterday, that balloon, when people saw it, good eyeballs, by the way, 110,000 feet. So it was
Wow.
way, way up there.
It was that high
Up
when people were citing it.
Yeah, that's where it was, and but it's it's pretty good size. It's 100 to 150 feet tall, and it's at that point the pressure inside is the same as outside, but to do that, the volume we've contained gets larger, and therefore the balloons, if you want to think of it, fully stretched, that's big. So it's with the sun angle where it was like it was an excellent reflector. So people got all that glint right back into the Portland area. And when they saw it, it was also not just at 110,000 feet, but it was actually out past, outside of Forest Grove towards kind of Vernonia, Banks sort of area, and then straight up that far. So it was quite a ways away from Portland, and yet still quite visible.
That's pretty crazy that you could actually see it from that amount of distance. Well, the
Yeah.
balloon itself, then I know there's a couple of things I want to ask. One, I don't know if you can answer this, but can you tell us more about what kind of scientific research it was carrying out?
Sure. We were working a project with NASA, and we were testing equipment here that will be doing and supporting atmospheric and climatic research in the Antarctic region. So proving out technologies before they take them down there and go use them for real.
That's cool. That's really interesting. Well, another thing that I know people were asking about because the balloon's up there, how do you retrieve it? How do you actually get it back?
Yeah, there's a lot of control for that. So to fly in the United States above FAA controlled airspace, we have to have a lot of safety measures. So what's up there is not just a poly balloon envelope with a thing under it, and we'll see what happens. There's control electronics, there's active transponders, the same thing that all aircraft use. So the location of that balloon is transponded, and every commercial aircraft and control center can see it, just like an airplane. But it also says it's a lot higher. So that data is all shown on the screen when aircraft see it. So that's all on board. We also have to have redundant safety measures. So yesterday we were carrying a parachute capable of recovering the entire system at an appropriate velocity when it hits the ground. So what we do when we're all done with the flight, yesterday's actually involved releasing something separately. So we sent commands, and those commands severed connectors, and our test system dropped away and then was separately retrieved. And then we do what's called a termination process on the balloon. And when we do that, we have the heavier equipment fall away. It pulls a parachute out, and then it pulls basically a line all the way down the side of the balloon and rips open the complete side of it. So when you do that, now you're exposed to the atmosphere. So the helium is not kept inside and the air outside. It's all the same. And therefore, two things descend to the earth. The balloon using its own drag, which is much like a parachute, and then the equipment is under a parachute. And we have to model all that. We do that in advance, so we know where those trajectories are going to go as they descend, because the winds change a lot from those altitudes until you come all the way down to the ground. And then everything is independently tracked. FAA can see it, we can see it, all other aircraft can see it. We also only do these things on nice visible days like yesterday. We don't do it at night. We don't do it on rainy days. We don't do it in clouds for the purposes that this is a truly uncrewed aircraft. There's no one on board, and aircraft rules are all based upon the ability to see things. So it has to be visible.
How
So
closely
yesterday
then?
we achieved, it was really visible.
Yeah,
So
so it's ideal conditions
that's
for that.
ideal.
So with all of that, with all of these different measurements and ways to track it, how closely can you pinpoint where each part's going to land?
Reasonably accurately, a bit accurately. Once you get down closer to the Earth, just like we're all used to, if you're flying a kite or use a hot air balloon, winds get a little broken up and choppy as you get right down close to the Earth. So that's the part that's actually the hardest to get really super duper pinpoint accuracy. But when we put these plans together, there's very detailed procedures called population avoidance criteria developed by NASA. So we look very carefully at not even getting close to areas where there could be an issue, because what you don't want is stuff to come down in highly populated areas.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess that was part of my next question is there any danger involved for people associated with scientific research balloons like this?
No, I'm not aware in the entire history of using scientific balloons, which goes back before the manned spaceflight, of anyone ever being even injured. And someone may fact check that and find out there was, but I'm not aware of anything. Certainly in recent memory, there hasn't been anything.
Something else I wanted to discuss too, with this research and with near space and you being located in Tillamook. What is it about Tillamook that makes it such a good location for this kind of scientific research?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our founder, Tim Lockenmeyer, was from the Portland area. He worked with another balloon company back in South Dakota for a long time. Wanted to come back here and started Near Space about 28 years ago. Then looking around, it was over in Tillamook, you had a couple things. You had the original World War II blimp hangars, so very large contained spaces that are nice to do tests and inflations and things like that. You had this great big airport with very low utilization. But if you take a look at the FAA charts that show every day where airplanes have gone, so if they leave like a line behind them where every aircraft flight was,
Mm-hmm.
you'll immediately see why Tillamook is a good idea. There's like nothing here. No one overflies us. And that's a great thing. So we have very, very small amounts of air traffic above us until you get over the coast range closer to Portland. And that for us is probably the biggest answer to that question. And you're also pretty close to Portland, so we're an hour and a half from the airport. And then we're also adjacent to the ocean. So there's quite a bit of scientific work that can and needs to go on with a maritime climate or access to the open water.
Nice. Looking at this research that you're doing, I guess another question I would have is how many of these do you send up, say, per year?
If you think about like maybe once a month,
Okay.
for us, there's two other commercial companies in NASA that also work in the United States doing this type of science work with balloons. And so, on total in the United States, maybe there's 4 or 6 a month in total in various parts of the United States.
And these are going up, so you've had these go up here before. Obviously, it's just nobody happened to see them.
Yes, that's correct. Or people did and just didn't think so much about it. But yesterday you had, I think, really good visibility. That thing was gleaming, and we just got the sun just right on it. And people's awareness is up after the great Chinese balloon overflight issue. So that makes people go, I've heard about those. That could be a
Yeah.
problem. Start asking. And that's good. Why you don't want everyone just to be, oh, no big deal.
Right. But it turns out this was very, very normal thing, and everybody who needed to know about it already knew about it.
That's all true.
Well,
That's
Kevin,
all.
anything else that you want people to know just about near space and just about the work that you do?
Yeah, we're a little hidden thing in Oregon. I worked and lived in Oregon for a long time, and I kind of knew about near space. I joined here almost 5 years ago, and it's a great group of people, very committed over here. We're small, but doing just some fascinating stuff. And there's some really interesting things that have been done here in Oregon. The NASA first tested gliders destined for Mars by flying them at 120,000 feet to 130,000 feet over Tillamook. And uncrewed aircraft landed at Tillamook. And this was before the FAA really had developed any policies for drones. So we were quite pioneering in that regard. That helped us become one of the 6 national UAS test ranges with FAA designated authority, and we're the only one on an ocean. So that's a great position for us. There's just always been really interesting stuff going on over here, and still continues to be. We're still doing a lot of things for the space work. Every time you see a Orion space capsule return to Earth and impact the ocean, and these bags deploy on the top of it to do what are called upright it in the case it lands inverted. Those are from Tillamook. We make those. There's one inflatable system on the International Space Station today. There's only one, and all of the systems in it that keep atmosphere in and space out were made at Near Space in Tillamook. So it's just to me, it's always been a really interesting organization here. It's a great group of people doing some really interesting stuff, and we're in Tillamook, so it's a wonderful place to be. But it's a fun thing to be involved in, and to see the fruits of what we're doing for the exploration of space and science in general.
I love it, and happening right here, like you mentioned, in Tillamook, in Oregon, all of that taking place.
Yeah.
And people that have no idea. Wow, that's incredible. Well, Kevin, thank you very much, for joining us to talk about this. And I could talk about space travel forever and the things that you're doing with that. But I know we'll run out of time there at some point. But really, thanks for joining us. Thanks for talking about this. Thanks for making the day exciting yesterday for a number of reasons, or at least a lot of phone calls. A lot of attention yesterday, but so good to talk to you and learn more about it, and really appreciate you joining me here.
I appreciate your opportunity for us. So thanks a lot, sir. Take care.
You too. And for everybody watching too, thank you for joining us. Again, this is Fox 12 Now. We get to cover a lot of different topics. Sometimes it's events, sometimes it's interviews, sometimes it's deeper dives on stories that you saw yesterday. Well, now we get to find out a lot more about it. So appreciate, like I said, always everybody watching. You can find out more and watch all of our past episodes at Fox 12 Oregon's YouTube channel, on the app, on the website. Lots of places to find that. So definitely do that. Tomorrow you can tune in. I'll be talking to people from the Pendleton Roundup about Pendleton whiskey. So completely changing gears, 1 p.m. tomorrow. That's what we'll be covering, and of course a lot more throughout the day. So thanks for joining us. I'll sign off right now. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.